at 7 days with no sleep. They begin to die of organ failure with 9 days without sleep. The CIA was authorized to keep prisoners awake for 12 days. People died from sleep deprivation.
Welcome to Vivid Bits. Today we are counting down the top 5 craziest stories from the Dalton Fisher Podcast, all the way from CIA spies, FBI agents, and special force operators. Here are some must-see stories that will have you entertained and on the edge of your seat the whole time. All credit goes to Dalton Fisher and the Dalton Fisher Podcast. All the links to the full interviews will be linked in the description below. Now let's get right into the video. Coming in at number 5, Jeff Tiegs recounts the intense combat mission that earned him his Silver Star.
I don't know if you can talk about this or if you even want to, but can you talk about what your Silver Star was for?
So first of all, good on you for saying the Silver Star was in Iraq. I think the Google says it was for Afghanistan, which that's the army for you, right? So you're probably going off of my story, but yeah, I think if you Google my name and Silver Star, it'll say I got it for Afghanistan, which just isn't right. And so as awards go, the Bronze Star there's two things for the Bronze Star. It's service, like if it's distinguishable service, or it also is like recognition for achievement in combat. You know what I mean? And even with a Bronze Star, you can get a Valor device and all that kind of stuff. I think all my Bronze Stars are just straight up, for the amount of work we did in combat. And then the Silver Star is a Valor device, and then the Distinguished Service Cross and the Medal of Honor. So as you start getting up into those, like something has to seriously go wrong, right? And it's a good soldier sets the conditions where those things don't happen. The men and women at Delta, I mean, they've all done things heroic enough to be awarded any of those awards. And that was one of the things that we always talked about. Was you don't get awards for just doing your job. Like you're expected to do dangerous shit. When you do dangerous shit, don't expect to get an award for it, And that's kind of the way that it was going in. And most of the time, and we prided ourselves on setting the conditions where you didn't need to do heroic shit. You just, you know what I mean? It worked perfectly. Well, as I was talking about when we were in Iraq and both Afghanistan, we became this force multiplier. So, as the heavy fighting wound down and we had elements that were really going after the higher level targets, we started to work by, through, and with other forces to help them become better, to be a force multiplier across a wider footprint, and that's what we were doing at that time. We were spread out with just kind of 4, 5, 6-man teams with a bunch of different U.S. units helping them target effectively and efficiently and getting them to the right place at the right time with the right information. And that's what this was. This started out as an op. It was our intel. It was out not far from Samara again, that area that we were talking about. That whole region is just a terrible country. And it was our lead, it was our information, and we flew out there and linked up with a conventional force, and they were going to go and take down the target. And one of the things, the tactics that was developed that the regular army was doing, and even special operations forces were doing, is this thing called the call out. If you've heard of that before, where especially if you are concerned about non-combatants, women and children, and you want to separate the women and children, you would surround the compound, and you would surround the environment through a bullhorn or loudspeaker. Tell the bad guys you're there for them to send out the women and children. Sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. The problem with the call out is it has to have escalation, right? Like if the guy decides he's not going to let out the women and children, well, how do you continue to escalate to influence him to do that? And if he's really dug in with his mindset, now he knows you're coming, etc. So going back to the style of fighting that we did, we really didn't do the call out unless the guy knew we were coming. You know what I mean? If it was a follow on target or somehow we had tipped our hand, then it made sense. He already knows we're coming. The call out seems like a way to mitigate that risk. But hitting him hard and fast, and the first thing he knows is a muzzle in his face, you're separating the combat. You know what I mean? You don't have to work on that escalation. So I was never a huge fan of it, um, at least for the style of warfare that I was involved in, and the culture of the guys that I was working with. But it was a bit of a safe bet for certain folks. And this conventional force, they were going to do a call out, and it seemed fine because the escalation of it, we didn't understand or recognize that there were any non-combatants on the target. So my thinking was, hey, call out's fine. It's safe. The way that the compound was set up, there's plenty of space to have concealment and cover. You call those guys out with their hands up, you take them captive, good day. If they want to fight, you lay waste to them, and it's over. There's no non-combatant. So it seemed like a good option to me. So we get the folks, this conventional unit on target. It's a company's worth of dudes. Okay, so a captain, a company commander, is the person in charge. And when I say a company's worth of dudes, it was about 2 platoons, which is around 25 or 30 guys each, that were moving to the site of the target. And then there was another 30-ish guys that were back with the trucks, because you couldn't bring the trucks in to this village because there was a bunch of canals and things that they weren't structurally um, strong enough to to bring those trucks, you know. So we lead them to the target, and they surround the building, and I've got my guys kind of spread out all over. I'm on one side of the building, kind of looking at the primary target behind a wall. My sergeant major's over there, our team leader's over here, and we're all just kind of watching it. And I'm confused. It's nighttime, and I'm confused because they're not doing a call out the way I expected it to be done, or the way we had talked it through. They weren't up on the walls. They didn't have their guns in. They just didn't have the effective protection, and they just started walking up towards the building. And I don't think they even had a bullhorn with standoff. So they walked right into the compound, um, and they started throwing rocks at the door and the window of this compound with a couple of Al Qaeda guys in there. And then they started yelling things in Arabic, which seemingly were, you know, come out with your hands up, whatever, whatever. And I'm watching all this unfold, thinking, oh man, this ain't right. Like, they're exposed. They're not doing this right. And I remember getting ready to push my button. You have your radios, internal and higher, and I'm ready to call Mark and be like, hey man, like this ain't right, you know? And I remember pushing my button down, and it's like I initiated 2 machine guns. I push it down, and it's like brr, two machine guns just open up from inside the target building. And immediately, I forget the numbers, 7 to 9 American soldiers drop in the compound. And the interpreter, like, low crawls up. So it's 2 windows, and then there's that space in between. So there's a guy, I think it was the interpreter, who's lying in between those windows, and there's American soldiers in various positions of woundedness, all lying in the courtyard, and these machine guns just keep going off, and they're doing a good job. They're like talking. It's like burp, 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 burp. I mean, it was really sustained effective fire, which told me these guys are soldiers. These guys are trained. They know exactly what it is they're doing. And then things quieted down. All that happened in the blink of an eye, and I climb over the wall because I'm trying to angle the targets, because there's a door that's open. So it's 2 windows, and it's actually an open door that isn't closed for some reason. And I'm trying to get an angle to shoot rounds through the door. And like they're way deep in the building, but I'm like, maybe I can just ricochet and tumble some rounds in there and hit these guys. So I climb over the wall, and I get behind a vehicle. There was a vehicle that was sitting crosswise. Um, and I'm trying to drop some rounds, and I see the dudes all starting to move. Like all of us are starting to move inside the compound, but I see like a bunch of guys like jumping over the walls going that way. And I'm like, what the hell? What the heck is happening? And ISR is up in the air, and it's talking to me, and I'm you know, they're telling me, are you guys exfilling? And I'm like, no. He's like, oh, well, there's like 30 dudes moving back to the trucks. And I'm like, well, that ain't us. We got something to deal with, you know? So I'm down behind that car trying to skip rounds in this building, and this American, not too much further from me to the wall away. Like it's about that far from where he was, maybe a little, maybe the length of this full room. And I think he's dead. He's crumpled, and he's laying up against the wall in kind of a weird position. And he moves, and as soon as he moves, they shoot more at him, into him. And he's like, hey, he yells, hey, come get me. I can't move. And I'm like, dude, there's 2 machine guns between you and me. Like, you're gonna have to crawl to me. You know, I can't get to you without getting shot. And he's like, I can't move my legs. I can't move. And as this is going on, it's like they keep shooting him, you know? I'm like, fucking hell, what am I gonna do? And I look around, and there's everyone else is occupied, right? Like, a couple guys are on the roof. They're trying to cut through the roof to be able to drop a charge into the building. You know, other guys are suppressing fire, trying to keep the machine guns from shooting. And I'm like, okay, there's nobody else. And I write about it in my book, and it's I really felt like I'm gonna get a rash of shit for this. Like, I'm there's 100% chance I'm gonna get shot. Like, there's 100% chance I'm gonna get shot. I just, hopefully it's, you know, in the extremities or in my plate or something like that, you know. Um, I was like, and I'm gonna wake up in the hospital, and their guys are just gonna be like, hey, hero. You know what I mean? Who you think you are, John Wayne? You know what I mean? And I'm just like, I do not feel like the guff. You know what I mean? Like, that's literally what's going through my mind. I'm like, you know, I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't even be in the compound. I should be controlling, you know what I mean? But here I am. It was like, all right, I just gotta go. Um, and again, like we talked about, I had like this acceptance that I could die in war. You know what I mean? I certainly could get hurt and shot in war, and I accepted that. But I also feel like I had a bit of a, you know, kind of a unwritten, we didn't sign it, agreement with God, where it's like, hey man, I'll give my all, but just let me live through this and be a dad to my boys. Like, take an arm, take a leg, I don't care. Leave me one of each. You know what I mean? I don't want to have 0 legs or 0 arms. That life sucks. You know what I mean? But 1 arm, 1 leg, I'm fine. I can do all the stuff I want to do. You know, it was kind of like this unwritten agreement. You know, the prayer talk is like, we're good, right? We're square. Like, you're going to let me live, and you will take care of this. And I really felt that was the kind of the agreement we had, and that was kind of how I felt too. Standing there, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go get this guy. Like, remember, not dead, not both arms, not legs, and not the balls. I don't know if we talked about the balls. Okay, let me be specific. Let's have a little contract clause. Nobody shoots me in the balls. All right, because the interesting thing is you're taught in close quarters battle to present your plate. You know, your plate's about this big, and it really does cover your vitals. You know, if you're getting shot outside the plate this way, it's really not that big a deal. You know, I don't want it, but it's not that big a deal. It's getting shot this way. You know what I mean? So we even have body armor where you've got the main plate, and then you have these little plates on the side, but you need these open spaces so your arms can move. Because that's where guys were getting killed, was getting shot through the side. You know, I mean, it tears right through your body. So, you know, you're taught to kind of present your chest. That's what I want you to shoot. Not over here and not down here. Like, shoot, right? This is what you're supposed to shoot at, right? You know, and if you hit one of my arms, that's fine. I can live through that, but it's gonna hurt, you know. So you're taught to present your plate. And even, you know, when you come into a room, or, you know, as you're approaching a building, you're kind of like puffing your chest out and getting really square. It kind of looks silly. And that was the decision I'm making. I'm like, okay, I got to go from here to there. Sideways is not good. because I get, a machine gun through the side, it's over. I got to figure out how to present my chest. And then we used to have these little things that you would clip on, and it was a triangular plate. We called them the dick plate, because it protected your dick, and before we would do hits, guys would kind of talk. You're like, you wearing your dick plate? You're like, nah, I'm not wearing my dick, because it really depended on like how sure you thought you were going to get in a gunfight, and what that gunfight was going to look like, right? Like if you think I'm going in a room and it's going to be a gunfight, everyone's wearing dick plates. You know what I mean? If it's like a run and gun where you're like chasing dudes through the woods or through the groves or even through the city, it's like, dude, you don't want that dick plate because it bounces and it smashes your dick. You know what I mean? So like the last thing you want to do is be like chasing a guy and have to be like hold your dick plate with one hand. So it was like, hey, is this a run and gun fight? Is this a chase? What are we doing? And I don't. For whatever reason, like none of us were wearing the dick plate. I think it was I think it's because we flew in. I don't remember exactly. One, we didn't think we were going to be engaged. We thought the conventional forces were doing it, and I think also because we flew in and took vehicles that it's just kind of awkward, like to sit all hunched over. So again, I look down. I'm like, I should have worn my dick plate. Too late. Don't have it on. So I do this kind of weird, like prancy runny thing kind of sideways, looking like I'm in, ballet or something. I'm like, I'm running sideways to get to this dude. And his name turns out to be Anthony. And I said this before to a bunch of other people. Anthony, if you're hearing this, reach out. I'd like to say hi. I Google stalked you. He lives in Arizona. He's a skydiving instructor, and he's doing fine. And it was hard for me to tell like how disabled he is. But at the time I didn't know his name was Anthony. But I'd like to see him. And I've been hesitant because I don't know what Anthony remembers, and I don't necessarily want to like break it open. And what he might remember, he might be mad about. Because he might remember calling for help and me going, dude, you can't be a pussy. You need to crawl over here. I'm not coming to you. You know what I mean? And like that might be the last thing he remembers, But Anthony, I did run over there without a dick plate and grab you. So I'd love to share a beer. But so I run over, and on many of the body armor, I don't remember if it was ours or not, there's a little carrying handle. There's a little handle on the back to hang on stuff and all that and grab. And I grabbed his carrying handle to start to drag him. And as soon as I grabbed it, the machine gun bursts. And I grab the handle and it breaks off. And I fall on my butt. And the machine gun is all like at my chest and head level. So I fall down and it's all like right above my head. I mean, it was like the Reservoir Dogs. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, and all this thing flies, and I look and I'm like, geez, because you can see. I mean, the wall above me is just like machine gun. It was like two blasts. It was like right to left and left to right, and all of it missed me. And I'm like, And then I don't remember. I think I grabbed his shoulders. I don't remember how I grabbed it. It was one hand somehow, but that was gone. So I grabbed something and I start dragging him. And as soon as I get him out of this like crumpled mess, like blood just starts spurting everywhere. Like because he was shot through both legs. Like when he said he couldn't move, he couldn't move. He was shot through both legs. He had a femoral bleed and he had an arterial bleed under his armpit. So as soon as I like yanked him and it went like this, it was just like blood fountains going off, and I'm like, So I drag him. It only takes me a few seconds to get him from where he was to behind this car, and then our EOD guy was with me, Scott, and Scott starts putting pressure. I don't remember. We switch back and forth between the armpit and here, and we're just jamming gauze and coagulant into both of those, and I don't really remember Anthony saying anything. I think he was unconscious. I'm pretty sure. I don't remember saying anything until later. I think he was unconscious, and at this time, we were switching off, trying to stop the bleed for Anthony and put tourniquets on him, engaging that building. And then the building behind me, like kitty cornered to me, this dude kept popping his head out. It was dark, but the light was on, so I could see him and I could see his wife. They kept like stepping into the doorway, and I'm just, I'm looking this way. I've got Anthony down here, and then it's like over here, and I keep having to look around, and I'm like, hey Scott, face those guys when he was putting pressure on. Like, I don't know what's happening. They're non-combatants, And this was one of those events where we talk about like the math you're doing in your head. I'm like, look, dude, you show your face one more time, I'm going to shoot it off. Like, do you not understand what's happening here? And I can't help this guy and run the risk of getting shot in the back, And then they pull it's well known with the Mogadishu stuff. The woman standing in the threshold of the doorway like this, and I see the guy like peeking from around her, and I'm thinking, dude, don't do this. You know what I mean? Like, you pull out a gun, I'm gonna do my best to shoot you, but dude, please don't do this. And then he is underneath his wife, and he like lifts up, he's like between her legs, and he's looking around. He's in the prone looking around, and I don't see a weapon or anything. So I just I shoot some rounds, like skip them off the ground and into like the door jamb to my right, their left, just to be like, hey dude, And I think I had some tracers in there, so they saw it. And as soon as I did that, they like disappeared. And they didn't show up again until everything was taken care of. Then as this was happening, uh, our two guys got up on the roof. They had smashed through the roof and dropped in a charge, and the charge went off, and it eliminated the threat on those guys. And then we were able to kind of have a moment and clean up the objective and really start exfilling all of the dudes. Um, and me and my EOD guy Scott, we package up Anthony. He's getting set out on a stretcher. Um, that's when I remember him talking, because we get it to the medic, and he also had a sucking chest wound. And a sucking chest wound, you feel like you're drowning because your lungs are filling with fluid. So like a telltale sign of a sucking chest wound is somebody won't lay flat. They'll always sit up because you feel like you're drowning. So even if you're like almost like, I could be wrong, medics would know better, even like unconscious, like you'll sit up because it's this involuntary reaction. So you put people on stretchers to carry them out, and he kept sitting up. And then our medic realized he had a sucking chest wound. He puts the seal on and pokes it. I forget what that's called. And then Anthony's just berating his guys. He's like, "What do what, you fucking cowards?" Because like they're all gone. You know what I mean? Like, he sees the only people fighting is us. His dudes are all gone. And he's yelling at him. I remember that. I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And I go over to, this was not in order because that was a little bit later as we took him to the vehicles to move. But so I'd gone in and we cleared that room with the man and the woman, and they were just standing there like this, like they were just Darwin Awards. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, dude, you know how close you were to getting killed? Like, you didn't, like, there's 2 machine guns, like, And then as I'm coming back from checking on that house, so main target building is now dropped. Those knuckleheads were over there. I come walking back to kind of check if we had left anything or kit by that vehicle, and all of a sudden this bush is shaking off to my right, and I kind of jump back, and I put my IR light on, and it was an American soldier.
Coming in at number 4, Lisa Phillips recounts her traumatic experience on Epstein's Island.
That was only a few months before what happened on the island.
And you were 21 at this point?
I was probably 19, 20 when I shot Any Given Sunday. And then a few months later, I moved to New York City. And then I started working with an agency there. And they were a pretty big agency. And so I was doing lots of really great shoots. I was basically a catalog model. But working 5,000, 7,000 a day. And that was the money back then. Yeah, it was good. Saks, Eddie Bauer, these types of clients, shooting all over for it, going to Hawaii, going to the Caribbean. So I was a working model, and it was going really well. I was doing TV commercials, all the ones that I saw as a young teenager and I wanted to do. And I was doing those commercials. So I was just living, my dream. I was enjoying living in New York City. Yeah, so it wasn't until a full year later. It wasn't a full year later when I got the big job to shoot a cover of a magazine, a British magazine in the British West Indies. So it was my girlfriend and I. We were both with the same modeling agency, this beautiful, tall Polish model, and the crew. So we all flew down to Tortola, right? And did the shoot there for a few days. And a lot of people don't know this either, but the photographer of that shoot was like this good-looking blonde guy. He wasn't old. He was, I don't know, maybe in his 30s. And he liked me, and he kept kind of hitting on me and, doing all this little stuff. And I'm sure that's why he booked me, because that kind of happens. They're going on a trip, photographer. Let's book the models I kind of like. I'm not saying anything bad about him, but he kind of made me a little uncomfortable a couple times. And so the other model was like, we have a free day. Like, I have a friend who's this really great guy. He owns an island nearby, and he's done some really great things for me. He helped me get my visa to live here in the U.S., and she talked him up and was like, we can just go hang out at his island. And so I was like, yeah, well, kind of want to get away from this guy. You're not leaving me alone with this guy, because I knew, I was kind of feeling what was happening. So I just kind of wanted to get away from him. So I was like, oh, it'll be safer if I go with you. And just whatever she was saying just sounded good. I'm this young girl, like an island. This sounds kind of fun. You trust him. Might as well go. So the person sent a boat, and we got on the boat, and we went over to the island. And so the island was beautiful. It was a gorgeous island, and there were some other beautiful young girls there. And we just hung out by the pool, and I had observed there was like an older man there, like a sophisticated older man. He had this kind of way about him, and he had dark hair, and he was frolicking a little bit with one of the other young blonde girls in the pool. And I kind of just observed, older guy again, younger girls. But whatever, I'd seen that a lot in the modeling industry. So we just hung out, and we had a really good time, and then we got ready for dinner.
Sorry to stop you. How old were the girls?
I'm not sure how old the girls were. I remember I was young at the time, so to me, the girls were probably the same age as me. And thinking back on it, I'm sure they were probably told not to say they were underage. I was assuming they were probably 18 or 19. And I can't remember if they discussed if they were older or not. We just didn't have those conversations, And so, and if we did, they probably said they were 18 or 19. So we got along. It wasn't like, they're much younger. We just got along, and we had a really good time. And so we got ready for dinner, and there was like this outdoor shower, and I don't know, the place was really cool. And so I felt really comfortable at that stage, and we all got together, and we went to this really long table with tons of really amazing like seafood and food and fruit, and started eating and hanging out. And that's when I met Jeffrey Epstein. And so he waltzed in, and I'm going back from my memory from then. I thought he was charming and really had great energy about him. And he made me feel very special. He sat down, and he laser focused right on me because I was the new girl, and he knew everybody else there. And he knew everyone else there very well. And so he started talking to me, probably just to feel me out, right? And And I was always pretty sophisticated. I had this kind of elegance about me even when I was younger, just because I grew up in Europe for a lot of my life and came from this Air Force background where we hosted a lot of events or dinner parties and things like that. And so I was very cultured. And so I think he was intrigued by that and wanted to know a lot more of my story. And, I let him know I lived a few years in Oxford, and he found that interesting. And I knew a little bit about traveling and art. And I got to talk about, all these wonderful things of my childhood and travels where, most guys, when you meet them, they don't ask you these kind of questions, right? It's more like on the surface types of things. And most guys don't really give a shit to really get to know you. Jeffrey did. But Jeffrey was like trying to go for those emotional things, like really asking about my family and my life. And I think he was really trying to see how connected I was to my family, what type of parental guidance or figures I really had in my life. And I wasn't close with my father, and he never really called me to check up on me. And I do remember talking about that kind of stuff because he triggered something in me. So we had a little bit of a bonding moment. In hindsight, that's the grooming process. But obviously I wasn't thinking like that at the time. I was just thinking, wow, a guy, and he was more of a mentor, older type of fatherly figure to the girls. He was not a playboy. He wasn't the type where you're thinking he's just like a Hugh Hefner and making all these crude jokes and things like that. He was definitely, when he spoke to the group of girls, it was more of a mentoring thing about asking about, your ambitions and things you really wanted to do. That was his way of talking to you. It wasn't at all to make you feel uncomfortable. So in those couple hours, I felt really comfortable, and I actually kind of liked the guy. I was like, wow, he was really interesting. Hey, this is cool. You're right. What a great guy. And the conversation was great. And when he said, oh, you lived in England for a while. Do you want to meet a prince? And so I was like, yeah. And there was a man that walked up at that moment. So he introduced me to him briefly, and I met him. And he walked away, and that was just super brief. And
This was the prince?
yeah, it's the prince. And the girls talked a bit about a prince. So I'm not quite sure if it was this prince or other princes that were there. But, it was very well known that Jeffrey knew princes.
Well, which one did you just meet?
I met a prince that was from England.
Andrew?
So he was from England. So he wasn't a Saudi prince or those type of princes that the other girls talked about.
Can I ask you a question? Why, if it was Andrew, why wouldn't you want to say so?
Well, it's not that I don't want to say so. I've actually been in documentaries about him.
Right.
And if we're fast forwarding, the whole reason why I spoke out was because of what I knew about him. And so I just feel like it's a different time right now. And I feel a little uncomfortable saying names right now. I just do. It's already out there. If people want to do their little research and see, that's what people do these days. You could see who I'm talking about. But I get weird now about talking about names. I just do, especially now that, I'm spoken out in Congress and people are like, these names, this list. It just don't feel like it's my responsibility to keep saying these names. The people who have the power to do something about it, they know the names.
And by the way, we talked about this off camera, and I told you, let's not go anywhere you're not comfortable going. I didn't ask you that because I want you to say it. I asked you that because I want to understand why you would be hesitant to. And I think people might be curious about that too. So again, it's not one of those things where I'm asking you to. Yeah. It's just I'm curious about why you wouldn't want to. So
it's a good question, right? Did I answer the question though?
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%.
Okay. That's why now things have changed a little bit.
So you meet Prince X.
I met a prince. And it was a big thing to Jeffrey to
How do you
say,
mean?
oh, you met a prince. I'm introducing you to a prince. Like you're special. You get to meet this prince. Almost like in hindsight, he was making me part of the group. He didn't have to introduce me to that prince. Right? He didn't have to make it known. So I had a great dinner. And I felt good. I felt it was a little special. Like, this, I'm here at this beautiful island and this person seems to kind of care about me. And I didn't really have those fatherly figures. And so he triggered something in me that meant something to me, to have that. And I kind of always looked for that in my life, right? I still do to this day. I like having mentors, and I like people who are older than me that I can learn things from. And he was just a brilliant mind. He's just a brilliant person to listen to. He doesn't talk the way most men talk. And everything he says is for a reason. He doesn't talk a lot, but everything he says is interesting. Every question is calculated and strategic that I think makes the group feel something. So I think that's what he was setting up with me. And he did a perfect job of it. You have to understand that someone who's grooming you is different than someone who's just hitting on you. Someone who's grooming you wants you to feel so safe that later on, whenever it happens, it could be 3 hours later, it can be 3 years later. But they're grooming for a reason, to get you to trust them. If I sat down and this man was just hitting on me, all of a sudden I'm just like, ew, gross, older man, what are you doing? Why are you talking to me like this? You're never going to get anywhere with me. You're probably not going to be able to abuse me later. But there has to be a way. There has to be a way of getting you to put your guard down and to feel like they're on your side a little bit. That is the difference when it comes to a predator. They're calculated. It's not I'm hitting on, what were you doing at the island? So after dinner, we went back to our quarters and got ready for bed. So everything was great. And so we were just going to go to bed, and we were chatting and hanging out together. And that's when there was a knock at the door. And one of the other young girls knocked on the door and said, Jeffrey is ready for his massage. So that's when things changed, because now I'm like, what massage? And so this is the first time she says to me, oh, well, like almost like, oops, like I didn't think it was going to happen, because maybe she didn't think it was going to happen with me, but she's like, Jeffrey likes massages and we have to do a massage. I'm like, well, I don't know how to do a massage. What are you talking about? Oh, it's a real massage. We're going to give him a real massage. So we had this kind of banter back and forth. Like, what are you talking about? Well, I don't want to do it. You go do it. And I'm going to stay here. And I think she thought about it for a minute, because she was like going to go do it by herself. And then she had a talk with the other girl, and she was like, she has to go. And I remember being like, why do I have to go? Like, I was so confused in that moment, but you can also see with the other girls that something's not quite right. And they don't really want me to go because they probably know what's going to happen to me. But they can't protect me. And they're there too, and they have to do what he wants them to do. So she said, we have to go. And she was like, just do what I do. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll just go give a creepy man a massage. Well, he wasn't a creepy man at that stage. I was just like, I'm just going to give this old guy a massage. Fine. So I didn't really think anything of it at that point, except for, okay, well, this wasn't what I was expecting. So I just went with her, went across the island to his bedroom area, walked in the door, and then this guy that I saw at dinner earlier now is naked on a massage table, head down. And I just looked at her like, okay, all right. And so she brought me over. We started doing an actual massage, So people hearing this at home, no, Jeffrey actually likes massages. And he actually taught me how to do a real massage. So everything was kind of okay. I mean, the banter with him changed. It was very different. Now it's a little playful, a little like, oh, do you have a boyfriend? Like, like questions like that. And so it was like a thing between the other girl, myself, and him. 2 young girls in the room with this guy who's in his 40s. So it was already a weird situation. Just this situation is weird. So we give a real massage, and he teaches me how to like close my eyes and do the massage and feel the muscles and all this stuff. I remember that because they were real massage techniques. And then she was doing the massage and stuff. And then maybe after like 15 or 20 minutes, it was a while, then that's when everything changed. And so at that point, he wanted to shift the energy in the room. It went more sexual. And he started to bring out like stuff, tools or things. And then he started to do those things, with her. And then, she's looking like you're looking at me, and she's looking at me almost just like, it's just like not a fear, but just go through the motions kind of thing. And I was just kind of locked in on her, couldn't really look at him. And it just was an odd thing. But you can tell that he loved that. He loved that control of the two girls and even the fear we had, or like the knowing that we didn't want to do this because we weren't like, hey, let's do this. Let's get into this. And we weren't like, a man knows when two girls are really into something. It's not. And also Jeffrey likes you very present. There was no drugs. There was no alcohol. He'll never had alcohol there. So this is a fully present situation. I don't know what's worse, but this was very present. And, he just went on to abuse both of us in that situation.
So, and this is something I've thought about with him, and I'm glad you brought that up. If you or I were in a normal, intimate situation with someone else, and someone else started showing signs of being uncomfortable with what was happening or scared or anything like that, you or me would stop and say like, hey, is everything okay?
Yeah.
And that's always something that I've thought about with him, because in these types of situations, you have innocent girls like you who were presumably very visibly afraid. And like, he's just spent all this time, these past couple hours, like really kind of getting his hooks in and getting you comfortable with him to trust him enough. And now you're just kind of thrown into this situation and you don't know what's happening and you're scared. And you were presumably visibly showing that. It's one thing for someone to just move forward in that situation and continue to do what they want to do to themselves or whatever. It's another thing to actually have that be what's getting you off. So is that your assessment that that's what he actually like got off on, is just the fear and discomfort of abusing children?
Yeah, that's another thing with serial predators, is that it doesn't have to be just sex, right? I think a lot of people are like, well, he's not having sex, so he's not like penetrating you. But a lot of times that's not what they want. They just want that control of the situation to do something, or to make you do something that he knows that you're in fear of or don't want to do. And like you said, in a normal situation, I'm like people like threesomes and things like that. Usually it's 3 active participants enjoying it. And you're also well aware normally that if someone's like not into it, you're like, okay, this is not going to feel good to me because you're not into it, right? But that's not the case when it comes to these types of predators. I don't give a shit that if you're into it or not. You're going to do it because, I just spent a couple of hours, making you comfortable with me. Now you're confused. He knows you're going to do it. He knows you're not going to run away, so he knows you're going to be uncomfortable. And he can see that she was also uncomfortable too, because I don't think she was expecting that to happen. But he didn't care in that moment. He just wanted to get off, he had his stupid little silly grin on and just was like whacking off and just like all super excited. I don't know how that excites you, but he was super excited. And he did finish, so apparently this is what this is his MO. I didn't find this out later, but this is what he does. So I just described this is Jeffrey Epstein and what he likes. So we just left as quick as we could, but we were in there for quite a while. And and went back to the room. And that's just when her and I kind of talked about it, but not really. It was like, you could tell that she didn't really know what to say. And that's the problem too, when she's also has been groomed by this person. He's done so many things for her. She's loyal to him too, in a way. So, she set me up and she did these things and she feels bad about it. But, she's also can't do anything about it because she doesn't want to lose her visa. She doesn't want to lose her career and things like that. So this is what I know now. It's not what I knew then. So we're just sticking to then. She's just like, I'm just sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't know he was going to do that. I figured he, wasn't going to do that with you, but now I stayed up that entire night. I remember just like sitting there, like looking at the ceiling the whole night, like scared to death that it was going to be another knock at the door and then he was going to want me back probably by myself. And I was just like hoping and praying, that I was just going to be safe. And I was just thinking, is this what the other girls are doing? Like, no wonder they all have this like weird look in their eyes, like kind of didn't, they liked being there, they liked him, but they didn't really, or super comfortable with it. It was something I can pick up on those things. And I remember thinking that back then because I had that whole night to think about it. Like, this is a weird situation. These men are both older. We're all really young. He's making me do something he knows I don't want to do. I had all these things going in my head. I just did not like this guy anymore. And I couldn't wait to get off. And I remember as soon as that boat arrived, we just, as quick as we could, like ran to that boat, jumped on it. And then I remember I have a picture of the island, from the boat. I still have that picture. And it's like, I remember being like, I will never go back there again. I will never go back there again. And I did not like that man at that point.
Did you see anything else that was strange? Or, you mentioned getting there and seeing the younger woman with the older man, which wasn't that out of the ordinary. But did anything else kind of pique your interest and over the course of the night or maybe in the morning, whatever?
No. Exactly what I explained is what happened. Yeah. It was just hanging out with the girls, the dinner, the massage, and then, waiting for the boat. It was a pretty quick night. Yeah.
And I guess the reason I ask is obviously you're plugged into the Survivor Network too now. And I think there's just reports of just very strange things happening on that island. And, you see things like that weird temple thing that he had at the corner of it. And like, I guess just from talking to some of the other survivors and that sort of thing, like what kind of stuff from an insider's perspective, like actually went on there?
Yeah. So if we're skipping forward, I didn't find out all of this stuff until 2020, right? So this is 20 years later, 15 to 20 years later. So yes, I know a lot now, but I didn't know back then but I had heard as a model back then of girls going to the island. And I would hear that there were other men that they would meet there. Princes, I would hear a lot about, and other powerful people. Now, mind you, men that are in academia or tech or these types of men, a lot of times they don't really know their names or care to know their names, so that's a thing where when they spoke about it, it was always like these older men, but it wasn't like name, right? Because a lot of times they didn't know the name, didn't care to know the name, or maybe wanted to suppress what happened to them. They're not famous men, a lot of these. So whoever they saw on the island, it wasn't like we were tossing names around, so that's one thing they have where, they can breathe a little bit because it's not, a lot of times, you don't remember all these names or these faces clearly. Yeah, unfortunately. But I do know a lot of these men kind of looked alike. There were a lot of older men and,
Old white men.
Old white men are not that good looking.
Just call a spade
Yeah,
here.
I know, a couple hairs on their head. Like, it wasn't like they were like, Donald Trump, like walking around where it's like, oh, I know who that is. I know who that is. This area is like charming, narcissistic. Like, you remember those guys. Yeah, most of those guys weren't like that. So then when they would say these people, when we would talk about it, it wasn't like it was like name. It just wasn't, fortunately.
Coming in at number 3, Brent Tucker talks on his first combat mission and how intense it truly was.
Your first mission was an eventful one. Can you tell that story?
Oh man, if they were all like my first one. It was a daytime raid, which was unique as well. It was a bad guy barbecue is basically what it was. An HVT that 7th Group had been going after for a while. He was at this barbecue and then he invited all his bad guy friends to the barbecue. It was just a juicy target that we could have waited for nightfall to hit it, but all of his friends would have left that were also targets. It was just too much to have them all in one place, and that's the battalion commander just couldn't turn it down. So he sent us on this daylight mission. Two ODAs, a minimal amount of Afghans with us, like maybe 4 or 5. I mean, I don't almost no Afghans with us. It was pretty unique at the time as well. Load up on Chinooks, daylight raid. Quick planning, out the door. Such quick planning, to be honest with you, as a new Green Beret, I don't even feel like I understood a lot of the details of the plan. But I knew enough about the plan, which was helicopter should land here, main compound should be here, and that's all I worried about. And as we loaded up quickly, took off. I don't remember it being a very long Chinook ride. Remember us, getting all the hand signals, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds. Yeah, it's coming in. And, remember just being excited. Like, if you think about it, this is 2005 now. I signed up 4 years ago. For 4 years, I'd wanted to be in combat. I'd wanted to do something against the war on terrorism, tangible, to prove that you can't come to America and kill our people and not have people like me come to your country and do something about it. And then, went through air defense, that mistake, what do you want to call it, a mistake or not, that path. And then, go through the Q course, which is a long time. Ended up going to South America real quick, go to dive school. I'm finally in combat. It's been a long time coming. I have waited for this moment for a very long time. I'm just excited. I don't know what to expect. I've read a lot of books, but at the end of the day, I don't know what to personally expect. I remember looking out the little circular aquarium bubble window of the 47, trying to get an understanding of where we are in target. And we were where I thought we were, which means when I look out my side of the window, I should not see any buildings or the target. So I know that sounds a little weird to look out there and to hope to see nothing, but that would have meant I knew at least we landed in the right place, or I thought we landed in the right place, and that when I do come off this, I should look left, and we should be where the village is, and the main compound will be a big building at the very, very left edge of this village. So all this is kind of planned throughout the process of my thoughts. But as I'm looking out, I feel like I'm no veteran at this point. Very much the opposite. I feel like we're coming in hard. And I remember telling myself, he'll this is just how fast we come in combat. He'll flare last second. And it's just, hey, we're coming in hard. And then we're talking like a couple, 5-10 feet off the ground. I think there's no way he can flare. And I go from looking up, you always have these cargo straps on the side of the Chinooks. I remember grabbing onto them and screaming at the top of my lungs, "Hold on!" Well, what the movies doesn't show you is helos are loud. God, helos are loud. The guy in front of me, heard "Hold on." Nobody else heard "on." Especially they get even louder as they pitch the blades and they're coming in, for landing. It creates even more noise. They're loud as can be. So the guy in front of me, Bill Gardner, my senior 18 Charlie, also heard me, and he holds on. And we're the only two guys that apparently are tracking this and holding on. And everyone else is getting ready to run off the ramp. And when we hit, and boy did we hit hard, we're the only ones that stayed on our feet. And even that almost ripped us off the cargo nut. And now we're landed, and and the bird's on the ground, rotors are going, the ramp is down, and me and Bill look, and there's Green Berets all over the floor in front of us, and just a clear pathway. Just me and him are the only ones standing. And even then, I was still an aggressive guy, and I said, "Go, go!" And I'm pushing him off, and we literally step on everyone's heads on the way out of the bird. And now we are, me and Bill, we're the main element. Oh yeah, not. You talk about a dog chasing a car and catches, like, what do we do? Like, if you'd asked me, you want to lead this thing out? I'd been like, hell yeah, I want to lead this thing out. And now that I get a chance to lead it out, I'm like, hold on. I'm running and I'm trying to get my bearing. I'm looking left. It's the first time it really, especially in hindsight, it hits you that you can study the aerial photography all you want. And it definitely helps. You get better at it as you go, but nothing looks the same on the ground as it does in overhead and aerial photography. Like it's just confusing. Luckily, this was it was a softball target for imagery, because it was a big 2-story compound on the very left side of the village that was supposed to be on our left. So that at least, all quickly came together for me. It was a lot further away than I thought it would be. Now, sometimes that's because the bird doesn't land where it's supposed to be, but I couldn't tell you if the bird landed where it's supposed to or not. It's a long time ago. I didn't even know enough to ask those questions or probably even be in the AER. But I do remember being, that's a lot further away than I thought we were going to land. And we're booking it. So we're booking it. Me and Bill show. Just two guys racing to the door. And I do remember seeing it. Like it's still like the sound of the helo is still in the background, still kind of loud. We're just running, and within your peltors, everything, your breath, the pounding of your feet, your gear and your gun as you're running at 100% full sprint. You're everything about you is loud, and you're not trying to be quiet. You're trying to be fast. And I do remember seeing like little, like pieces of dirt just kind of jump up in the air around me, and going, "That's weird. Like, I wonder what that is." Like these are only like split-second thoughts, and I do realize at some point I'm looking up, and you can start seeing some of the somewhere that this fire is coming from. I remember they were getting shot at. I'm like, this is cool. I think we're getting shot at. Like it's what I wanted. I wanted action. I'm getting action. Daylight raid, Chinook, multi-ODA, first off the bird, taking fire. And I'm like, yes, war. Me and you have met. So
Your sweet embrace.
your sweet embrace, war. And about this time, the Apaches are starting to that were there to both protect the infill of the Chinooks and now protect the assault force. They're starting to make their gun runs and get their bearings, and they're making gun runs on buildings. But as we were running towards the building, this Chinook is making a gun run basically on the other side of the village, but towards us. Not normally what you want, but this is the chaos of war. Like, this is the truth. Like, you can want a gun run to go left or right, as I'm going straight all day long. The day you get the gun run you got, And if it would have taken them even longer to do a full turnaround to make a left and right, I wouldn't have wanted that. We wanted fire support. We wanted it right then. What was developing in front of us was what eventually was not just the bad guy compound giving us fire. The whole village decided to come out and say hi to us with their machine guns. We had taken a heavy volume of fire, and we needed those Apaches to start asking them to stop with good old American missiles. A couple of them, unfortunately, went high, and this is the problem with not making gun runs at a 90 degree, is that when it went high, the target, these rockets are coming straight at me and Bill. And I remember it, just like it was yesterday. It's almost like it almost looks like a video game, when you have like these missiles coming at you, and you start to think, man, this is kind of coming at us. And you're running straight to the compound, and you're looking up like, those aren't coming at us, are they? And they get closer and closer and closer, and you and Bill basically dive out of the way for an Apache rocket to land in between you. And now, as you're both getting up and you look over your shoulder to see if each other's okay, and you're covered in dirt, and it's almost that cliche. It's almost that moment in 300. Remember, they're hiding behind the shields and they start laughing like, we'll fight in the shade. Me and Bill getting our feet, and now we're just laughing, running to the compound, because it's just crazy. Like you can't imagine this. You can't think it up. Here we are taking fire. Now we almost got hit by our own rocket. Now we're covered in dirt. The guys just fell, on the helicopter behind us. It's just a circus, and enjoy the show. So we finally make it up to the compound. We're the first ones to the compound. By this time, that jump for life from the rocket gave some guys some time to catch up with us. Now we're all really running together. Make entry. There was some close quarter kills in that compound. Really cool to see. That sounds weird, but really cool to see that. You go through all this training, and now it's real to be 6-8 feet away from a armed insurgent with an AK that that has a chance to kill you as much as you do them. Like it's fast, it's furious, it's raw, it's awesome. That was the taking down the compound happened pretty quick. At that point, we get told, "Hey, I want you guys to," because of, and ISR is watching it the whole time, and because of how lively the whole village got, the SOTF, the 7th Group Command, was like, "Hey, we want you guys to spend the night there. We want you to do a KLE, which is a key leader engagement. I want you to talk to that village tomorrow, and I want you to explain to them that this is not okay. And we will come back and do this all over again as many times as it takes. This is why we came here for this guy." And they were very aggressive. I really enjoyed working for that battalion commander. So they were more than happy to stay the whole night, stay up all night, and come tell all the elders later, if you want to keep going at it, we'll go at it. So part of staying up all night, we had AC-130 support, and all night, they did not like us there. We got reports all night long of 2, 3, 4 men crawling up to our positions. AC-130 would take them out. We'd go out there and do a BDA, a battle damage assessment of these dead bodies. Pull all their AKs off of them. Check for intel. Come back to the compound. Strong point that compound again. The same compound we just took down. Now we're spending the night in. And an hour later, hey, there's several people in trees now. There's some trees around the compound. They're trying to crawl up these trees. Looks like they got some sniper weapons. Cleared hot. Hey guys, hold on. AC-130's firing. Give it a second. Boom, 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 boom. No one's moving. Okay, we'll go out there and check that dead body. Just all night, just going out there checking dead bodies all night, checking dead bodies. It keeps you awake. It keeps you. It's just like coffee. Yeah. And you did that all night. And to tell you, it was great to have the security blanket of the United States Air Force and an AC-130 Spectre gunship, and what it provides. Amazing technology, amazing crews, amazing capabilities. kept us alive that night. Otherwise, things would have got really sporty that night. Wake up the next day, we start searching the rest of the village. We're running across dead people again, from the firefight the day before, dead women, dead, other dead males, old dead guys, young dead guys. But I do remember stopping, looking at the dead female. She seems late 20s, early 30s. And I do remember thinking to myself, man, I didn't come here to kill women, though. Like, I came here to experience combat. But that's the thing about combat. You don't get to pick and choose, who shoots at you. I didn't shoot at her, but it's not like I chose to not shoot at her. I don't remember seeing her, during the firefight. Obviously, someone else did. And I think Bill, same Bill that ran with me to the compound, I think is looking at me, kind of struggling with this, like, just staring at a dead woman. And he comes up and goes, "Hey, man, nothing. She voted. She's here supporting the men. They're all passing ammo, back and forth, and they use the women to do it. And she made her choice, and this is the decision that this is what the consequence of those choices. Don't look into it." And I took that advice, and that's solid advice. That's solid advice. And I don't want to harp on this even more, but some other mental health professional would probably tell you, we need to unpack this. We need to talk about this later, and then write an essay about it and tell me how it made you feel at the time and really dig into this. Or you could just say what the fact of the matter was. She's a female, sure, but she's a bad guy, acting like a bad guy, got bad guy results, case closed, moved on with your life. And that was some of the best advice I got as an early Green Beret with stuff like that. Because I'd see a lot more of it and a lot worse of it, later on. And we're not the monsters some media would portray us to be. The American military does not target innocent women and children. But combat has consequences and whether they were part of the badness or not, you can't completely separate innocent civilians from armed conflict, especially when your enemy likes to hide in hospitals and hide in mosques and hide in families' houses. It becomes very complex and intricate and intertwined real quick. So that was only the beginning of, something I would see, but Bill's absolutely right in the advice he gave me. We ended up finding a lot more RPGs, ammo, guns throughout that village. We'd only begun to scratch the surface of what they were willing or could bring to bear on us. So we took all that away from them. I was a junior guy at the time. I wasn't part of the KLE. I'm sure the 7th Group Commander, he was a company commander. That was a major that was in charge of the operation. I'm sure he had some choice words for the village elders at the time. We loaded up on Chinooks and we left. And that was my first taste of combat. And like I said, I was now under impression that is combat. And every time you load a helicopter, get ready for a wild ride. And the other truth of combat is I hit a lot of dry holes. I hit a lot of, we got the guy we were looking for a lot of times, and he just decided to give up, and lie about what he did for a living rather than fight. There was definitely more of those targets in the future, but that wasn't the norm.
Coming in at number 2, CIA spy John Kiriakou speaks on the highly controversial enhanced interrogation program, also known as the torture program.
So at what point do you find out about the enhanced interrogation program?
Well, I was back at headquarters in May of 2002, and I was in the cafeteria, and a friend of mine from the Counterterrorism Center came up to me and said, very offhandedly, "Hey, I'm so glad I ran into you. I meant to ask, do you want to be certified in the use of enhanced interrogation techniques?" And I had never heard that term before. I said, "What's that mean?" He goes, "We're going to start getting rough with these guys." And I said, "Well, what does that mean?" And he said, "Well, we're going to do," and he listed these 10 techniques: waterboarding and sleep deprivation and, smack in the face and all these different kinds of things. I said, that sounds like a torture program to me. And he goes, no, it's not torture. The president approved it and the Justice Department approved it, and we're gonna start on it. I said, I don't know. I think I have a problem with that. Let me think about it for an hour. So I went back up to the 7th floor. There was a very senior CIA officer up there who I had worked for 10 years earlier. And I said, hey, I just got approached and asked if I wanted to be certified in these enhanced interrogation techniques. What do you think of that? And he said, first of all, let's call a spade a spade. This is a torture program. And you know how these guys are, he says. Somebody's going to go overboard and they're going to kill a prisoner. And when that happens, there's going to be a congressional investigation and then a Justice Department investigation, and somebody's going to go to prison. You want to go to prison? And I said, no, I don't want to go to prison. So I went back downstairs. I said, this is a torture program. I want nothing to do with it. So they asked 14 people, and I'm sorry to say that I was the only one who said no. 2 of us said no in the beginning, and then 1 changed his mind. But I was the only one in the end that said no. I'm glad I did. In retrospect, I was right. They were wrong. But things got much, much worse before they got any better.
How so?
Well, they started torturing Abu Zubaydah on the 2nd of August, 2002. And it was a slippery slope. They did many, many, many things, not just to Abu Zubaydah, but to most, if not all, of our high-value prisoners that were never authorized by the Justice Department or by the president. You know, you can't force hummus up someone's rectum, for example, right? You can't play Russian roulette with them. You can't, they learned Abu Zubaydah had an irrational fear of insects. And so they put him in a coffin and they dumped a box of cockroaches in there with him and then closed the coffin. And they left him in there for 10 days just with a diaper. You can't do that. Nobody told you had permission to do something like that. And waterboarding was supposed to be the ultimate technique. But there were a couple that were clearly worse than waterboarding. Sleep deprivation, right? We know from the American Psychological Association, which has done studies on this kind of thing, that people begin to go insane at 7 days with no sleep. They begin to die of organ failure with 9 days without sleep. The CIA was authorized to keep prisoners awake for 12 days. People died from sleep deprivation. Another one was something called the cold cell, where they strip the prisoner naked, they chain you to an eye bolt in the ceiling so that you can't sit or lay or get comfortable in any way. They chill your cell to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and then every hour, somebody goes in and throws a bucket of ice water on you. We murdered 2 prisoners with that technique. That was never approved as a technique. So we did all kinds of stuff. There was another thing, a technique that was considered to be kind of a mild, no big deal kind of thing called walling, where they roll up a towel and put it around your neck, and then they shove you into a wall, right? Well, the wall, it's a, what do you call it? Fiberboard.
Piece of plywood,
whatever. There's a little bit of give, and they have the towel so that you don't get whiplash. But they never used a towel. They never used anything around the neck. And it wasn't a plywood wall. It was a concrete block wall. And now we have, for example, Mohammed Attar, the nephew of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was slammed so mercilessly against the wall that he's now brain damaged to the point where he can't participate in his own defense. Mm-hmm. They gave him permanent, lifelong brain damage. Where does it say you were authorized to do that? So it really was a slippery slope, and nobody was ever punished. Nobody will ever be called to account. Just recently, we're filming this in early September. The last week of August of 2023, the Defense Department admitted that they cannot try Ramzi bin Ashib, one of the 9/11 co-conspirators. They cannot try him because he's insane. He's clinically insane. Why is he insane? Because of sleep deprivation.
Do you think that's bullshit, though?
No, because this is the Pentagon's psychiatrist who's saying he's insane, not his defense attorneys.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it goes back to your point before about, you consulting your higher up at the agency, and he said, listen, somebody's going to go overboard.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I read Jim Mitchell's book, who was the Air Force psychologist that with Bruce Jessen designed the AIT program, and I guess the towel around the neck was supposed to be some sort of Pavlovian conditioning, where just the feel of the towel going around the neck.
Much of it was supposed to be Pavlovian. Yes. They called it learned helplessness. That's what it was. Learned helplessness. So all they would have to do is roll up the towel and the prisoner would just crumple.
Yeah. So I guess it's worth just giving some context to the listener as to why these things were even done in the first place.
Right. So the reason why they were done is something called the ticking time bomb scenario. The ticking time bomb scenario is you've just captured, let's say, Abu Zubaydah, and you know that Al-Qaeda is planning something big because Osama bin Laden said he was planning something that would dwarf 9/11, right? And you've got to get the information before the bomb goes off. So you say, hey, Abu Zubaydah, give me the information. He's like, fuck you. I'm not going to give you the information. So what do? Do you waterboard him? Do you sleep deprive him? Do you put him in a cold cell? Do you beat him? Do you put cockroaches on him? Do you put hummus up his ass? What do? Now, the problems with that are severalfold. First of all of it's illegal. Secondly, there really is no such thing as the ticking time bomb. That's only in the movies. It's never happened in real life. It just doesn't. Besides, even if it did happen, when you're torturing somebody, they give you everything they think you want to hear just to get you to stop torturing them. And so then it's going to take 6 months for the analysts to sort through it to figure out what's true and what's bullshit. And by then the bomb's gone off anyway. And again, we're either going to be the international, shining beacon of hope for human rights and civil liberties, or we're not.
Yeah.
But we can't have it both ways. I mentioned a few minutes ago, Ramzi bin Ashib being declared insane. Even if he had been declared sane, nothing that he said can be used against him at trial because the CIA tortured it out of him. Nothing that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed said, nothing that Abu Zubaydah said, or that Abdurrahim Aneshri said, none of it can be used against them in trial. So what do? We continue to hold them illegally without charge, or we let them go. The bottom line here is the CIA royally fucked this up. And that's why every time the CIA would start to torture prisoners, every time Mitchell and Jessen were put in charge of the interrogation sessions at the black sites, every FBI person in the country would leave. The FBI didn't even want to be in the same country where this torture was taking place.
Yeah.
Like I say, it kills me to compliment the FBI. But they were right, and the CIA was wrong. And here we are, 22 years after 9/11, literally no one has been prosecuted for that crime. No one.
Yeah.
Nor will anyone be prosecuted because the CIA ensured that no prosecutions could be carried out.
Ironically, you're the only one that went to prison for
I'm
that.
the only one that went to prison. Yeah.
So, last thing on this, and I'm just playing a little bit of devil's advocate here because I think it's important to listen to all arguments. Like I would like to have you in here just as I would like to have Jim Mitchell in here, or Jose Rodriguez.
Sure.
And decide for myself. And I hope the listeners do the same.
I agree.
And I'm just, I can't help but think about September 12th, man. And there's a quote in Tenet's book where he says something along the lines of all major foreign policy decisions after 9/11 were viewed through the prism of smoke from the World Trade Center and the Pentagon.
Absolutely true.
So when I think about the intent of Jose Rodriguez, of Jim Mitchell, of Bruce Jessen, I think about hindsight being 20/20, the ticking time bomb situation, frantically trying to save American lives when everybody was running around like a fucking chicken with their head cut off. When you look back and you think about the enhanced interrogation program, what role does intent play for you?
I believe that all of the people that you mentioned had good intentions. I think that this points to a bigger problem at the CIA, where you put sociopaths in positions of authority, where they come to believe that they're above the law, and that because they're the good guys, they can and should do anything that they want to do. But I'm confident that Jose Rodriguez thinks he's the good guy, and that James Mitchell and Bruce Jessen think they're the good guys. No doubt in my mind. At the same time, when there's a program that is as controversial and as potentially dangerous as the EIT program, you need some way to put the brakes on it. We already know that the congressional oversight system doesn't work. It just doesn't. You can't have 12 staffers on Capitol Hill overseeing an agency of 25 or 30,000 people. You just can't. It doesn't work. At the same time, the oversight committees have become nothing but cheerleaders for the CIA, rather than the brakes on out of control CIA policies. And when it comes to things like open criminal investigations, the CIA needed to swallow its pride and defer to the FBI, and they just wouldn't. They wouldn't do it. And a lot of that was because of a guilty conscience, of having fallen asleep at the switch and allowed 9/11 to take place in the first place. But, the torture program, nothing good came out of it. Literally nothing.
You went to Guantanamo in 2002. Can you say what you were doing there?
It was an interim assignment. I was a big star after I was beta. One of the muckety mucks came up and said, "Listen, we've got an underlap. Do you want to be chief in Guantanamo for a little while?" And I said, "I've never been to Cuba. I'd love to go to Cuba." So it's summertime. It's pretty hot. I said, "Okay, I'll go." So I went. Just filled in for somebody until a permanent chief was named.
What was that like, being over there?
Hot.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's striking about Guantanamo, and I would guess that this is probably still the case, is no one has any idea of what the other guy's doing, right? Like, I'm used to working with people from a whole bunch of different agencies, like, "Hey, FBI guy, how you doing, buddy? Hey, DEA guy, keep up the good work. Oh, you're the ATF guy? We should have a beer sometime." That's how it is in every embassy. At Guantanamo, you're walking past somebody, you put your head down. Like, who's he? I don't know. And I'm not telling him who I am. And all that guy knows is those buildings over there, don't go over there. That's, what do they call it? OGA, other government agency. They don't even like to say the letters CIA. They just say OGA. Yeah, don't go over to that side. And then, you can hear people screaming over there. Yeah, it's not good.
And coming in at number 1, former FBI agent Scott Payne speaks on the disturbing tactics cartels would use.
So what kind of cartel stuff were you working on?
Well, I was I was there for 6.5 years. I started on the drug squad, so you're already working cartel stuff, right? Because you're at the border. You have to pay a quota to deal in their territory, even if you're working for them. But back then, Oziel Cardenas was the head of the Gulf Cartel, and the Zetas were the enforcement arm of the cartel, like paramilitary trained. They would do the kidnappings, they would do the beatings, the torture generally, and Then the flavor of the month came to where the Joint Terrorism Task Force was being created in McAllen, and they were looking at special interest alien smuggling. And that would mean that it's not just undocumented aliens. We're looking specifically for smuggling organizations that are bringing in undocumented aliens from threat countries, China, anything Middle East, probably, Yemen, places like that, Iran, and they were. I remember even at that time, we were looking at Brazil, not because Brazilians were loaded with a threat country, but there was heavy reporting that there were camps over in Brazil to help westernize and modernize radical jihadists, to help them blend in, to come in, kind of thing. So we were looking for that. But it was rare to find like a pipeline of, like, say, the Chinese triad brings people from China all the way to New York City. Somewhere it's very rare. So you would see, like, they get to Mexico, they got a smuggler, now they got to get across the river. They get to a staging location, now they got to get around the checkpoint. And then they're on their way out into the United States. And that's what we started working. But that's the same cartel. You got to pay your quotas. I've had targets that ended up working with us later, but they missed their 2-week quota and they got kidnapped by the cartel. And it's the same. Back then, the torture was kind of the same. They do the battery cable thing on your nipples and stuff like that, and your private parts. They'll do cigar burns. They love doing that. Cigarette burns, prods. They would do, like, take a kilo of cocaine, just hit you in the head with it, stuff like that. It's 2.2 pounds. It's going to hurt, and things like that. But there were cases where my squad would get the kidnapping extortion calls too. So most of those were drug related. And in my mind, that's kind of like a breach of contract for me. I'm like, if you were in the dope game and your job was to you're the mule, you drive the dope to Dallas, they take the dope out of the trap, put the money in the trap, you drive it back. But now it's missing $100,000, but then sometimes you would see, like, a 19-year-old and a 20-year-old, and you're like, you were in over your head. You didn't know what you were doing. And now they're being held, and families getting called, and they're saying, we're going to kill your kid unless you give us $100,000 or $300,000. And then you get it down to $100,000. And then you're basically bartering over a phone call. And a lot of times you're on an hourglass, like the sand's running, because they would only use the victim's phone and they wouldn't recharge it. So we knew we had this much back then. We knew we had this much battery life to try to get the deal done. And it might be finally get down with the family. The family's got $60,000, and they've got, back then it was the 2000s, right? So maybe they got a 2006 Suburban V8 4x4 with 40,000 miles on it. Maybe, okay, we'll take the Suburban and the $100,000 or $60,000 in the Suburban. And at midnight, here we are pushing that across the bridge, and here comes the kid back across. But there were true victims that I believe as well. Like if somebody's they've paid their money to be smuggled in. So now they've crossed the river, but they're at a stash house, because now they still have to get past the checkpoint. And at that stash house, now the smugglers are extorting the family for more money. And they're like, if you don't give us more money, we're going to dump your 5-year-old daughter in the brush and leave her to die. And we knew they would, because the case started with them dumping her aunt, who was a 16-year-old physically, mentally challenged female, and they left her in the brush to die. But luckily, Border Patrol found her. And now we're trying to save that 5-year-old girl. And we're on a phone, and we're doing everything we can through our techniques, which are, we won't get into some of the stuff with tradecraft reasons, but we're trying to find that bad guy, trying to find that girl and save her. And it might be 3 days of no sleep or very little sleep and crappy food, and we're just running and gunning. This was before carnivore snacks and all that good stuff was out there, before your smartphone could tell you where good places to eat are. And then, you kick in some doors, and we get the evidence we need, and we kick in some more doors, and we find the 5-year-old girl and rescue her and put her on the phone with her mother. Those are some really good cases. But the cartel, again, that was they ran it, and it was there was an SOP. There was a a method to it. As violent as the cartel was under OZL, I would say it got worse after OZL got taken out, because then it created this vacuum, and now you got the Sinaloa cartel saying, we're going to take over. Or you got MS-13 saying, no, we're going to take over. Or you got the Zetas going, wait a minute, we're the paramilitary people that do all the kidnapping and torturing, and we're the ones that should be running this thing. So then you get to the point to where the last time I talked to some people down there, they weren't really doing like we used to. It would just be maybe one phone call, not a lot of extortion stuff. They just chop heads off. Now, for the listeners and viewers out there, I did get a nasty gram from somebody because I said somewhere before about not trying to say something bad about Mexico, but they didn't value life. That whole conversation was like this. We're talking about the cartel. We're talking about the bad. I'm not talking about Hispanics. I love Hispanics. I love the Hispanic culture. And I've got a boatload of friends that are Latinos and Latinas, you know. But I'm talking about the cartel.
It's crazy that you even have to clarify that.
I'm like, I didn't say all of Mexico.
We're not
I didn't
conflating.
mean it. Yeah.
Okay, so you ended up getting the 5-year-old girl back.
Yeah. Put her on the phone with her mother. She was they were Hondurans, and the family was in Manassas, Virginia. And when we put her on the phone, I mean, you know, you're exhausted too because you've been going nonstop, and we had some go-getters, man. We had some go-getters. Some we were so go-getter, we had to slow our go-getters down. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, hold back. I got my arm like with our green ready to get in the crash. All right, stay right here. Hold on a second. I'm going to let you go in a minute, dadgummit. You know, just run through every door. And like, I'm not sure that was a good clearing technique, but there you go. I know it worked. Nobody's hurt. But yeah, every guy was crying. Like we put her on the phone because she still had her little Catholic girls school suit on, man. And man, she gets on the phone and she's talking Spanish to her mother, and we're all like, we get her on the phone and we're all like, you know, everybody's looking away. Like all the guys are turning our backs to each other, like facing outward from the circle. All right, man, you want to go get something to eat, man? I was like, man, the dust. It's terrible. The mesquite trees, I'm allergic to them. Like, I'm leaking. Yeah, it's good stuff there, man. Those are some great cases. And but there was some pretty horrific stuff. OZL, he had a line that he fed people to. We confirmed that. Thought that was a wives' tale. He had a I don't know what to call them now. Little people. I don't want to offend them. It's midget. I don't know. That's what it was then. But apparently there was we thought it was a wives' tale that he had a midget who was blessed in the nether region that he would use to torture people, rape them. And we thought, that's BS, man. That's a bit. So one Christmas Eve, I was driving. By this time, I have laid my groundwork in the Rio Grande Valley. I had great sources from McAllen all the way to Roma, Texas. And I'll start getting calls about a carjacking in Rio Grande City, but the guy steals the car, doesn't look in the back seat. There's an infant. So now he's in Camargo. He's in Mexico trying to pass this off. Now the cartel, they're not happy. They are pissed. Because you didn't even, now you look at all this heat you're bringing for a stupid car. You know what I mean? We got bigger things going on here, if you know what I'm saying. And they were holding him. They were getting ready to kill him. And I was driving to Phoenix, Arizona for Christmas. I had we'd traded in the truck for the minivan with the DVD player, you know. Got the 2 little girls and my wife, and we're driving, and I'm on the phone trying to make things happen. And putting people in touch with sources and doing this and kind of coordinating and they're working it. And then they called me. They got the guy back and they called me and they go, Scott, the midget's real. And I'm like, what? And they're like, this dude is bawling. The midget was in the room. He was getting ready to get raped when the call came in and said, all right, basically FBI's got this case, whatever it is they needed, it's time to do the deal. And then but he was in the room. That dude was crying, and I was like, the midget was real. I'm like, that's just a whole nother, yeah, that's like, I don't know. And then we had one of the last ones I did there was kind of what I mentioned earlier. It was the one where they went up, the young kids drove the car, followed by cartel members to Dallas, somewhere around Dallas, kids get dropped off at the mall. They take the car to wherever the bad guys are. They pull the dope out of the clavo, the trap, put the money in, then they come back, let the kids drive the car back. They're mules. Well, it was missing $100 or more grand. And what happened with that one is we figured out what was going on. We were already working with the families because there's 3 kids, 3 different families, and we're working. And okay, I understand they lost money, but bro, these kids, come on, they're not making. How much did you pay them to drive? I mean, don't tell me. I know you're not going to tell me, but I know it went $100 grand. And they're not that dumb. Well, the 2 guys that received the car, one of them was way younger. He's in the cartel, but green, working for the cartel. The other guy was older, and they called him the Eagle, Aguila, I think, right? And he was not smart. He went and bought 2 cars and put money down on a house, but he bought it where all the contacts are for cartel, and they're going, hey, this dude's dumping some money. Didn't you guys lose something kind of thing? And the last we heard is they had him in a 55-gallon drum of either diesel fuel or acid. I think this one was diesel fuel. They had already either chopped his hands or his fingers off while he's alive, and then burn him. They call it El Guiso. They make you soup, turn you into human soup. So that's what I meant when I said the value of life is a little different within the States. So, and I'm not trying to paint a bad picture, but look, like I've interviewed MS-13 members who are no longer MS-13, but they grew up in Honduras or El Sal, and they're telling me about what they had to see growing up. You're talking, your brain's not even fully developed yet, and you're seeing murdered people in the street, and they just leave them. So when you walk out of your house to go to school or the store or whatever you're going to, you're stepping over rotten bodies. Your brain's not set up for that. And I mean, kudos to that guy for getting out of it, but good gravy. I'm sitting there listening to him, and I'm like, I don't even know. I mean, that's short of a miracle. I don't know how you're straight right now, seeing all that stuff and being a part of who knows what and what you've done and seen.
Yeah, it's not a good start having your brain desensitized like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say, for the sake of example, let's say American citizens get kidnapped by the cartel, and you guys are working on that case. Let's say it's today, not necessarily the duration of a phone's battery anymore. But let's say negotiations either stall or they're non-existent, and you guys get a lead on where they're at. Now, I'm just from a curiosity perspective, would the FBI at that point, would you guys send HRT to go maybe get them? Would you coordinate with the military and
not in another
JSOC
country
thing or
not in another country? I mean, if we that's going to a lot of red tape, just from my knowledge. That's a lot of red tape. Now, back in the 80s and 90s, maybe. There's undercovers that used to just hop on a cigarette boat and go from Miami to freaking Venezuela or something. I'm like, boy, you couldn't do that now. I'm like, some of my mentors, they're like, oh, yeah, we'd take the boat over. I'm like, man, you can't. There's no way headquarters. They'd be like, operation's done. But I wouldn't see that happening. Now, what's going to happen is we have all our liaisons. So that's what happens. We have a border liaison. We put trainings together. We do events together. And you may be there with somebody who's crooked. They are with the Mexican police or a police department or in Comandante. They may or may not be dirty. But you develop the relationships. So when that kidnapping happens, I can be like, hey, I'll call the the border liaison officer and say, hey, this is what we got. The subject's name is this at 1:30 this afternoon. Central Time, at the corner of Trenton and 10th. 3 black Suburbans pulled up. A bunch of guys jumped out with balaclavas and BDUs. They grabbed the dude and they took him. Cool. Then they start calling their contacts. And you've got legats and you've got, consulates and you're reaching out to them. And you might even be reaching out to the legat in Mexico City, and they're working their way back. And then it's usually 30 minutes to an hour, we'd get a call and go, yeah, they got him. The safeties have him. He's in Miguel Alemán, and the deal is this. This is he lost this dope. He lost a load. He stole something, or he owes him money. Sometimes it was very rare, but sometimes it would be a legit hit extortion with no business failings or nothing like that. Or we get that more of what I picture as a hostage thing, like the 5-year-old girl. Now they're holding them at a staging location. Now that you're in the States, yeah, we're working, and that's what we did. I had to pick on that one with the 5-year-old girl. I had to pick a guy. Like, we knew that we were pretty sure our phone was at this. Let's just say it's a gas station, and I'm told something to the effect of, "Hey, it looks like the phone's moving." And at that same time, 4 different people walk out of the gas station, and you're looking and you're going. And I was just going on my gut, man. I'm just like, I'm looking at the 4 and I'm going, let's follow that one. And it was right. We put that one at a house, and then they were like, it looks like the phone is very near that house. We go up, start knocking on the door, Policia, habla la puerta, FBI, and you hear all the running and slamming in there. And we're like, all right, we got PC, man. We kick the door in, get the guy, but it's not the stash house. But then we're finding all these phones that have been cut off. That was where all the noise was. Cut all the phones on. I'm going to call the phone that's been the extortion phone, the one that's been calling the family. I'm going to call that number. And while we're all standing in the room, you dial the number and that phone goes ring, and you go, that's our phone. Turn around, But that doesn't mean he's got to tell us where the stash house is at. So we still got work to do. And then you track it down and find it. I never saw a thing like where, like in the TV shows, like, where they go over and do a black op, in Mexico. I'm sure it can happen, but not to my knowledge in that FBI realm.
Well, that's what I was thinking about. Like today with, President Trump has said a lot of stuff about kind of hitting the cartels a little differently. And shit, man, I don't know
how that's going to pan out. Yeah. I'm for it. Definitely for it. But I just know, I've worked dope in some form or fashion for 28 years. Even if I was on a public corruption case, there was dope involved. That's just, I don't know. It was like the nexus. Can you really stop the war on, with the war on drugs, can you stop the inflow of drugs? From what I've seen, not for, definitely not for long, but can you shut down a huge lick in your county and your county's dry for the next 3 months? Yeah. Yeah. But you get, let's just say it's a legit warehouse in Mexico because you've got the shipping labels and they're shipping, it's an industrial, complex or whatever. And they've got their assembly line. So let's just say in Tennessee, we take off a load and they're packaging, they're selling like PVC, something or another, some kind of industrial thing. And then in that is the dope. And we seize that. Well, once they get hit once or twice, same address, same building, now different title, now different. It's no longer long tubes. It's like square boxes or whatever. They just change it. Like they didn't do meth forever. And then they saw that meth was easy and cheap for them to make. And to see somebody out there, like at least in my region, doing shake and bake, the old days where you'd mix up your own stuff and everybody's breaking out. So you can get, the crystal meth was coming in so rampant and easy before I retired, coming through Atlanta and north. It's just like I would interview drug addicts who were downer addicts, like opioids, heroin, but they're on meth. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. That's not even the same high. It's a completely opposite high. And they go, yeah, but it's cheaper. And they just say it helped with the withdrawals. And I'm like, okay. But yeah, it's so to say you're going to shut down the cartels, well, what would they shift to? That's what I'm thinking. Because we stop one avenue, well, what's making money? Now, of course, it's going to be something illegal, usually. But I don't know. We'll see.